Hello and welcome back to Lorcana Villain. My name is Baker and today is our next player interview on the channel. And yes, I'm not really here because I went to record this and realised that my camera had not been on charge, and if I don't record this now, then I won't get this video out tonight. But I recently had the pleasure of sitting down with Skylar, more commonly known as Sky, a Lorcana streamer, and has had a pretty successful Lorcana career so far, both with Real Cardboard and via our Pixelborn tournament days of the past. But yeah, Sky is a huge fan of Sapphire Steel. Last format, we sat down with Moyen to talk about Sapphire Steel, and Sky's been taking a pretty different approach for the last couple of formats, choosing to not play any copies of A Whole New World. He's a super good player, and it was a pleasure to sit down and have a chat with him, so we're going to move straight on. A quick shout out to the channel sponsor, Cardmarket. If you're looking for Lorcana singles at competitive rates, then check out Cardmarket. But let's jump in and have a chat with Sky. And as promised, here we are with the man himself, one of the greatest Blue Steel representatives in the community. We have Sky. Welcome in, my friend. It is so good to have you here. It's such a pleasure. I've got a host of things that I want to talk to you about, but before anything else, I'm sure most of the community know who you are, but in case there's anyone watching, say this is the first video that they've ever seen you, ever heard of you, tell us about yourself. What's your history with TCG, and what got you into Lorcana?
Yeah, so most of you guys probably know me as Sky. I'm kind of just the Blue Steel guy in this community. I started playing Lorcana in Set 2, but before that I've been playing TCGs for quite a few years. I guess the first TCG I played wasn't even a physical one, it was Hearthstone. Played that since middle school pretty much when it came out, loved it. I also collected Pokemon cards as a kid, and I'd always wondered what the game was like, so later I tried that game competitively, got into a little bit of Magic. So I guess that's kind of my background in TCGs. Never super competitive. I went to a couple regionals for Pokemon, but I never, I guess, put the time that I put into this game to kind of pursue the competitive ventures. But yeah, so I'm the Blue Steel guy. I've been playing since Set 2. Kind of got my start with the pack tournaments, the Tia Beastie tournaments, which I dearly miss those in Pixelborn. But yeah, so kind of took that into traveling to the DLCs, and here we are.
And here we are. So you say a bit of Hearthstone, which obviously is not a physical TCG, and then a bit of Pokemon. So, and as you say, your time was more casual. What is it you think about Lorcana that's made you take that leap into really wanting to take serious play and play at the highest level? What do you think that's given you that push to really take it that seriously?
So my family's always been big Disney fans, and so when I heard Disney's making a card game, and I already enjoyed card games, I was like, well, I got to give this a good try to be a main game that I enjoy and play for a while. And then I just fell in love with it. I tried it on Pixelborn, and I found Blue Steel, a deck that I really like the playstyle of. Made some changes and some improvements that I found, and had some success with it. So, I mean, obviously, if you're trying to be competitive and play competitively, it's important to have some success to keep you, I guess, in the game. So I don't want to say that if I didn't, find some success early on in some of the first tournaments that I would be as involved, but that's kind of just how it is. I probably wouldn't have started making content, probably wouldn't be talking to you right now if it wasn't for some of that early success that I found. So that kind of got me hooked.
When you first picked up the game, it was Set 2, Rise of the Floodborn. Was Blue Steel literally the very first thing that you tried out, or was it the first thing that you settled on, this is my playstyle?
So I didn't really start playing until Set 2, but I tried to get some of the cards in Set 1. I think I downloaded Pixelborn, maybe played a couple games, and I think I played Blue Steel then too, just as a fun. That was the first. I was like, okay, Belle's a cool card. I opened it. Let's try to make a deck around her. So I played a few games then, but yeah, going into Set 2, I think I looked at the meta and it was 65% red purple, and all the data that was compiled at the time said it was 48 or 49% win rate. And something just didn't make sense with that. I was like, okay, people are saying this is a tier 0 deck. Everybody's playing it. Why is it, not above 50% at least? And then I looked at Blue Steel and it was 53 or 54% of the time. So I'm like, okay, maybe something's here. Maybe this is just kind of a slept on archetype. And yeah, it turns out it was. It was, I think, by far the best deck. I think probably the strongest deck that any deck's been in any format, in my experience. But yeah.
I remember talking to Zephyr like ages ago. I don't know if it was set 2. It wasn't. It was set 2, set 3 sort of time, and having a conversation with him about where he was saying, like, and it was at the time, it was very a surprise to me to hear, but really championing Blue Steel and being like, I really think it's probably best deck in the game, and like it's a hard punish deck. Like, you need the miles, you need to know how it works, and like it is the most punishing to misplays. It's probably best deck in the game, and it took a while for that to kind of really start to translate into success. But I would definitely say by set 2 it was already seeing some success, but set 3 I think it was thriving. That's probably been one of its better success rates in a meta. And yeah, some very passionate fans of it. Yourself, we have to give a shout out to Hard and Sweet, also a very big advocate for Blue Steel, and of course people like R&B. And yeah, like there are some people that are out there that I always say this is when I'm casting, there are some very passionate, loyal Blue Steel fans that will stick with it to the very end, and you're one of those people that have stuck with it. And in the past, it was Whole New World, same as in Steel Song, that was really making this whole deck work and put it together. But like, as a Steel Song obviously has a lot of other interesting songs and singers, but with Blue Steel it was Whole New World plus ramp, so get to a nice high ink count. Whole New World, you have this whole fresh hand of resources, you're hopefully at a higher ink threshold than your opponent. I think that was the generalized strategy, but we've reached a point for you specifically and a few other players where we're not even seeing a Whole New World in the deck list, and that's been the case, I know, for you for a while now. So what led to this initial decision? And I know you've talked about this, I think, with Harlan in the past, and maybe with Alphos. I think I saw you had a conversation about along the same lines. But for the sake of anyone that may have never seen a Blue Steel deck without a Whole New World, and they're looking at the screen and they're going, "Why, Baker? Why? Why? Please tell them why."
Sure, I think I'll take the long scenic route for this one, just because
Please do.
So nostalgic for the history of Blue Steel and all its eras. So yeah, set 2. The most unfair thing we could do with Wheel is just we had Bell. We played Bell because there was nothing that really was a single target removal for Bell. Like Red Purple was the biggest deck. They had to play a B prep to remove it, which was just, took their whole turn. They couldn't respond with anything. And then if you were on the game plan of playing a Wheel, you probably just had stuff to throw down next turn, double, triple spell, play another Bell maybe even. And if they don't have another B prep, you're just running away with the game with it. So that set 2 is just like, okay, we drop a Bell, we drop something else, and if they don't beat prep, then we just win the game. If they do beat prep, then hopefully we have another Wheel. We just establish the singer, play 2 things, and keep going. Set 3, it was a little bit different. Red Purple got a lot stronger, a lot harder of a matchup. So we started playing stuff like McDuck Manor. That was probably one of my favorite times in the game because like McDuck Manor is just such a goofy vanilla location that like you wouldn't think is good at all, but it turned out to be like just the secret sauce to how you deal with them having Queen's Castle. Yeah, and also they got Medusa, so like it was like Bell was not safe anymore. They had a single target removal that could take it out. So then after that, we found out about Lucky Dime, which is kind of stuck around and obviously to where it was today. So it was kind of funny. I think one of the pack tournaments, everybody thought Lucky Dime was just this super clunky, inefficient item that was never going to see the light of day. But it turned out to be. Yeah, I said it might have some potential, but I thought it was a little bit too clunky. I was like, oh, we've already played Hades. It's uninkable. Like, I don't know if we can afford to have another 7-cost uninkable. But Lucky Dime came out and it turned out to be fantastic. I think I played it with some McDuck Manor still, but you played Bell, you could just Lucky Dime Bell for 5. But then set 4 happened and things got a little bit scary. So obviously green has Ursula, yellow has Bare Necessities. So Wheel isn't always safe to be ripped, and green still got a lot better those sets, things like Diablo. The green Steel matchup and the Steel Song matchup, honestly, you really don't want to be wheeling if you can help it. Those 2 decks were on top, and also Red Blue actually became a real deck. So that matchup is very tough to wheel. So if Red Blue and Green Steel are the top 2 decks we have to worry about, and of course Red Purple is always the thing, and we don't want to wheel in either of those matchups, then we probably shouldn't play it. And that's what it turned out to be true. So with Wheel, it's like, yeah, the deck's still good. Going first, you're still going to do very strong things with Fishbone and Quill, but you go in second, you really can't wheel in a lot of these matches, and it feels awful. So, if 50% of your matches you don't want to wheel, that's not a great card to be playing and to build your deck around. So it's like, well, we got 4 more popsicles in the form of Fortis Sphere. I always said if you could play like 8 Flaversham and 8 popsicles, you wouldn't have to wheel. And I was like, well, we got the popsicles, so let's try it and see if it's good enough. And it turns out it was. Like sometimes, like yeah, you don't hit your multiple Flavershams, but 8 popsicles in Flaversham is a lot of draw. Like if especially if they don't deal with Flaversham right away, if you just get 2 triggers off or 1 ETB plus 1 quest, that's a lot of cards. And another thing is like if we're not playing wheel, we don't have to really super rely on playing a singer on 5 that's going to live. So we can kind of tailor our deck around not having to wheel and like abuse the fact that okay, we're not going to wheel, so we're going to play a lot more like big heavy threats like 4 Tamatoa, 3 Hades as an answer instead of like Zeus and Let It Go. So there's a body attached to it that quests for 2. Stuff like Simba you can play. So there's a lot of good top decks, and not giving your opponent that refill and still having a strong draw engine yourself is super important. And then finally coming into this set, we got a couple additions with like Pete and Vision. Vision's like just a main thing to keep digging for Flaversham. Like sometimes it can help you find the first Flaversham. If you can play it on 2, or you can play it on turn 4 if you play a Fishbone Quill on 3. So that's like one of the most important things. You go like Popsicle on 1, play a Smee or 2-drop on 2. Play a Quill, and then the next turn you can Vision for a Flaversham since you don't have it, and still play it on that same turn because you can go at 6 ink. Dig for that first Flaversham, dig for the second one, and then it's also just fantastic late game for digging for like Tamatoas or Dimes or something. And then Pete's good too. Pete just stops, B prep. The deck is called Checkmate because of Ariel and Pete. You can play Ariel and Pete on 9, and they can't remove it at all. So
yeah, it seems like it's doing an awful lot. Like I'm not gonna lie. I think Vision of the Future sells me on this concept a lot more. Like I think Vision's super good. Like Red Blue's already benefiting from it a lot, and it makes sense that you would because when I first, I think when the no will concept first came up, I think it was only when it first came to popular view at least. I think it was not too long after that it was the Ursa's Return Content Creator Set Championships in London, and me and Alphos played round 2 or 3, and he was on your wheelless blue steel.
Yeah,
but I'm on red purple.
But
I'm on red purple with 3 B Kings, 2 Tremaines. So like it kind of just steamrolled. So like, I think that very much that early biased point of view from the pilot made me think this is. I mean, again, I was aware that I was red-purple, so it changes things a lot. No, because I figured he was the wheelless version quite early, so I was like, oh, okay, I can rabbit, I can do all this, because it's a very different play style if you know that they've got the wheel as opposed to not. Sure, But like, I think I was just stuck up, on the Flaversham thing of like, wow, that's your own, 8 Popsicles is great. Love the consistency, just extra dig. But I just couldn't get over my feeling that, like, you miss Flaversham. Surely it all just falls apart. Or at least you're in a situation where you're just living and dying by your top deck. But again, like you say not long ago, so many of these cards are these high-end, big, more threatening bodies that are good top decks as they are. But with Vision of the Future as well to help find the Flaversham and help find these pieces, I'm feeling a lot more sold on it. And is there any way that it's developed from the new set? Obviously, you mentioned the Pete and Vision of the Future, but anything else that's changed about it for in relation to other decks in format?
So I think I started off with, I think the only other main change would be I call it the flexible 2-drop slot. So of course we're always going to play Force Me. I mean, hopefully, unless they power creep something crazier, but
I hope they don't.
It should be. It'll be a while at least. I was playing Razul for the other where the broom slot is now. Not just because
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, Green Steel wasn't played hardly at all going into the set. A lot of people said it. Yeah, it's just like not great. So okay, well if we're not worrying about Diablo at all, we don't need to play broom. We'll just play something that's better against Steel Song and Red Purple. And Razula is actually very good against those decks. Hitting 3 versus 2 is pretty big. You can kill an Aerial without having to, have a Tinkerbell ping or something like that. But now, of course, Green Steel is definitely on the menu again. Like people like the deck. It did well. So even if it's not going to see as much play as it did in Vegas, it's still those games where you do find it and you play a broom. It's just so good. like your chance of winning is like so much better. Um, but yeah, so that's like the main thing. I think I tried Kronk when Steel Song was super hype at the start of the set, but I don't think it's super needed. So especially
I
since Steel
remember
Song is
watching. I
coming
was
down in
watching that
play.
stream. I
Yeah.
was watching your stream when you were trying out. Like, do something, Kronk.
Yep.
Please do
I wish we could
something
still
to.
play. I wish I could still thought it was worth it, but because he's hilarious.
Hey, a bit of spice one day. But yeah, super cool looking list. What is it? Why is Blue still struggling right now? Why aren't we seeing it? Other than, I think the most obvious is that it's got a lack of pilots, and of course that's going to make a huge impact. But like, why do you think it's struggling so much at the moment in meta? Why are we not seeing it top cut events?
I think the main thing is that, you know, back in set four, when I first started playing no wheel, people were like very hesitant to even try it. They thought,
Yeah,
okay, well this deck is built completely around wheel. Like I don't understand how you could even fathom building a version without it. So back when that started, like nobody wanted to convert. That really hasn't changed too much. I think it has its best chance to change now because I think this deck is super well positioned going into Seattle. But yeah, people love playing wheel, and if wheel version isn't good, they're not going to be super, keen on putting time into figuring out a way to not play it with wheel. Um, I will say this deck is like very unforgiving. So like if you just, pick it up for the first time, maybe you played wheel before, um, and you try it and you're like, well, it just seems okay. It's really those like small like mistakes that can lead to a loss over a win. Like if you mess up one point in your curve and you do something that was like slightly less optimal, it really compounds and like 3 turns later you're like, oh, I could have, set up for a way where there was almost no way I could lose if I would have just done that. Maybe inked a Pete or something is a good example. Like I could have inked this, but my second Tamatoa, but I just said, okay, we're getting to late game, so I'll keep two Tamatoas versus a P when I really only needed one. Stuff like that. So yeah, it's I think it's pretty unforgiving. I think there is a lack of pilots, just lack of people that try no wheel for 20 games and really get a good feel for it. It's also like red blue is a scary matchup. It's probably your worst matchup. I think this version is actually like pretty close to 50-50 with like the ice block Sisu heavy version, but it's still scary. Like I think it feels worse than it actually is. Like when you're in the moment, sometimes it's like, oh, I can't kill their Flaversham, they can kill mine. They're gonna have so much more cards, but some games you don't need that many more cards. Like if they, don't deal with your first Tamatoa at like on turn 5 if you have a Fishbone Quill start, like that's probably enough cards. You went with Flaversham on 4, Tamatoa on 5, it stuck around, that's 2 extra cards from Tamatoa. Yeah, like that matchup after that, it's like, okay, well, if I find one Hades and they try to go Tamatoa now, I just win. So it's like a little bit more sketchy because you don't have as much cards, and it always feels bad staring down your opponent with 7, 8 cards and you have 4. But uh, yeah, I think people are scared of red blue more than they should be.
For anyone out there that is like thinking about picking this up, or maybe they have in the past, and like they're looking for a reason to pick it back up again, and they're maybe worried about some specific matchups. Let's take like the big three at the moment. So if you are going into a match and you're up against red purple, you just know it's red purple. You don't know the counts or anything like that. You don't know what any specific counts. What's your game plan going in? What you're looking for in the mulligan? Is there anything you're trying to achieve by a certain turn or anything like that? Start with red purple if you don't mind. Just like guide us through your thoughts.
For sure, yeah. Going first, your strongest line is going to be like Quill and Flaversham. So like they really can't do anything super unfair going second with Flynn. So obviously you still want to hit a 2-drop because they could still drop it, or just hitting a 2-drop in general is good. But yeah, so you want to go like Popsicle 2-drop, ideally Smee if you're going first. Fishbone Quill, second Popsicle if you have it. That's not super necessary. And then turn 4, play Flaversham. And if they do a really strong curve out, sometimes you can go like turn 4 Flaversham plus another 2-drop if you like really just, want the board presence. But that's not always necessary. Usually if you can go, Popsicle 2-drop, Fishbone Quill, Flaversham, even just going first, Popsicle 2-drop, Mickey plus Flaversham is very strong. But going second is when that matchup can get a little bit scary. So obviously you're 1 turn behind, and 1 turn behind versus a Flynn deck is kind of a spooky place to be in. But you should we play 7/2 drops, you'll almost always hit it. So the first trigger on Flynn will not go. But say if they go, Flynn Sisu Castle, the stuff that they're looking for, you really want to go like your 2-drop. If you find a cannon, that's fantastic. You'll always keep cannon that matchup because you can kind of sneak in a cannon on turn 3 with a Fishbone Quill, and it's just maybe ends their like complete tempo string. They just question with the Sisu instead of getting that trigger every turn. But if you don't get the cannon, you really want to go like Smee, Fishbone Quill into Tinkerbell, because then if they want Queen's Castle on 4, you have the Smee plus the Tinkerbell to hit for 7 and just take it out, which is very nice. And they still can't, quest with Flynn because the Smee is holding it up. So that's what you're looking for to stop the tempo going second. And then also another big thing this matchup, like once you do stop the tempo a little bit with the Tinkerbell, dropping Lucky Dime on 7 is fantastic. Or just the turn before they can be prep. Like Red Purple is like one of the few decks that doesn't have any possible answers they could be running for Lucky Dime. And a lot of the times if you do drop it, they still kind of want to be prep because you're probably have like a Flaversham and a Tinkerbell, maybe a 2-drop. You might have a big board, and then if they be prep that, you just have so much time to draw into stuff for the Lucky Dime to activate onto. And like if you drop the aerial after the B prep and activate the dime, it's very tough because they pretty much have to hit Lady Tremaine as the only decent thing that gives some sort of tempo to them that deals with it. But if they have the B prep again, it's very bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say and this would be same question for Red Blue really. Really any matchup where Be Prepared is involved, how much more cautious are you with your aerial, or are you quite happy to like throw one away just to test the either to get rid of the B prep or test if they are even running the B King or Tremaine? How does the use of aerial change if you know there's a B prep in the opponent's deck?
Yeah, so I think you typically want to drop it after the first one. They usually won't even have a second B prep, so they're just gonna have to kind of deal with it. You typically though want to try to drop it before or after the dime. Just because like if you're dropping it after the dime, you're gonna play and activate, which is a free 5, and you have to take your whole turn to deal with this, or else you just lose. That's 15 lore right there from one card. So a lot of times what will happen if they do deal with it, you just like, okay, I want one Tamatoa or I want one more aerial, and like that's fine. So like sometimes if your hand has multiple, don't be too stingy with it. Like you can get rid of like that first aerial and just say, hey, like this is maybe I play efficient double spell with aerial, like aerial plus Smee or something. And if they be prep or they deal with it, that's fine. I have another one in hand, or I have a Tamatoa that's going to do the same thing. Just make them play the defensive option. So like don't get too like caught up in, oh, this is what like if I have 2 aerials, like if after a B prep I just play one and activate and play the other and activate, like it's just the game. Like sometimes it's just better to burn the one and make them deal with it now, and worry about finding a second one 5 cards later in your deck.
And what about against Red Blue? Obviously, we've just talked about dealing with B prep specifically, but they're offering very different threats because just of the way they work, they're not playing Flynn Rider for a start. So how do you navigate that Red Blue matchup going first/second?
Yeah, so Fishbone Quill is still like your best friend in that matchup. You really want to like sometimes if I have like a vision, I'll even like pitch a Mickey in my mulligan just because I'm like, well, if I don't hit it in the mulligan, then I'll probably vision for it. Especially going second, you really need like a Quill. But yeah, so the matchup is kind of like completely reliant on Hades, Ariel, Pete, and Dime. Last set, No Wheel was felt very good against a lot of Red Blue because they didn't play like item removal. Like most people didn't play any Judy if they played one. It was like whatever. So you could still do like the same play that you do against Red Purple now, where you just play dime on 7 and say pass. Okay, well you're B prep your Sisu, like it's not gonna get the dime. I'm in such a good spot. But now they have like stuff like Hideaway and Cusco. I think most people are off Cusco, but I'd say most people play at least 1 or 2 Hideaway. So it's can't really completely safely do that play where you just say drop a dime before, which is a little bit sad. But sometimes you still have to go for it and take the gamble. But yeah, it's really just based off of Hades. So you just do your normal stuff. You always want to try to play Flaversham on 4. I guess one thing early game is I don't typically play Broom on 2. It just doesn't lore for enough. I will always play Smee if I have it. But yeah, I typically just pitch away the Broom because it just quests for 1. It's not super impactful. But yeah, you
Good
want
matchup,
to
yeah.
ramp, preferably Fishbone Quill on 3. Always want to try to Flaversham after that, keep up the card game. They're probably going to brawl it right away, or a little Sisu it, but that's fine. That's kind of to plan. If they do, you can go straight into stuff like Tamatoa on turn 5, which is kind of like a miniature Flaversham that also turns on the pressure. A lot of times
Yeah.
they don't have 9 ink then, so like you can get away with an extra turn of Tamatoa, which is nice. But other than that, yeah, like Hades is a huge component to how that matchup goes. It's like, okay, well, I have my Flaversham out, you might kill it, then I do Tamatoa, and if you can't kill it, they probably want to play their own Tamatoa to match you, and then you play Hades, and it's like, okay, well, I still have a Tamatoa out that's questing, and I just Hades your Tamatoa. You have nothing on your board that's threatening at
Hmm.
all. I'm in a huge advantage spot now. So yeah, try to conserve those Hades for their Tamatoas. Some people like to try to Hades the Flaversham, but that's typically not good. Like that's essentially just giving them a card because you're putting a card into the inkwell. So it's like half of a Flaversham trigger, and you also just wasted a Hades. So yeah, that, and then of course your
Save
end
it for the
game
big
is,
boys.
yep, you gotta try to save them for Tamatoas because that's their like pretty much only way to speed run, a 2-turn clock is a Tamatoa lives 1 turn, then they threaten you with a lucky dime.
Yeah.
But then your late game, and especially if you can afford to kind of checkmate them, stuff like Ariel and Pete. If you Ariel Pete and you have like 9 lore, technically it's just a dime if you have more items to kill them next turn, I guess. I mean, they can deal with the Pete, but still the 10 lore is still
Yeah.
threatening. Um, so yeah, you don't always have to also hit aerial Pete. Like sometimes I think people might fall into the trap of like, oh, I have to save for my big aerial Pete turn and then finish with Lucky Dime. Sometimes you can just like, play aerial if you have a second one and make the efficient play to deal with it. But yeah, that's really what you're looking for, like, and you kind of almost assemble like these pieces like, okay, Hades, I need my one Hades in case they go aggressive with Tamatoa. And I need my
Hmm.
one aerial for when I'm trying to close out the game. And then you need your one dime. So you kind of like put together the pieces with Flaversham and Vision, I think, in that matchup, like slowly over time.
I mean, you can afford to have these higher count of uninkables anyway, generally speaking, with a Fishbone Quill deck anyway. And yeah, as you say, if you emphasize the importance of having these pieces at the right times, then your counts make sense. What about the Simba? I'm a fan of Simba, don't get me wrong, but I'm sure there's nothing in here unless it's filling quite specific roles. So what is it about Simba?
Yeah, so like the red decks, he's not very good in. He only quests for 2. The ping doesn't do too much usually. So red purple. I mean, red purple actually is pretty good in, but it's specifically red blue. But he's just a super good tempo answer. So some games, especially when you're going second against anything aggressive or even like red purple, you just want to kind of curve out. You play like a 2-drop, you play your ramp, you like play a Tinkerbell, and then you can play something like a Simba, and like all of a sudden you played a Tinkerbell and a Simba, you're just completely dominating the board. It's also good versus stuff like Diablo. Like a lot of times you can like cap out your curve at 7 ink and just like they Hail Mary a Diablo and then you just ping it for 2 and it's pretty much just game. It can also hit like a beast as well. But it's also really good against Steel Songs. I think Steel Song's probably the matchup where it's best into. A lot of people stop running World's Greatest Criminal Mind, so like having something that needs 2, like a Zeus plus a Storm to kill, and it also has like a
Hmm.
Tinkerbell, kill 2 things effect is like super and powerful, and it usually kills one thing when it comes into the field, so it can just completely, hold them up for a while. The filter effect is actually pretty good sometimes, like sometimes versus like
Hmm.
matchups like red blue. He's not a completely dead card if you're digging for like a lucky dime or something. So there is some like versatility beyond those matchups. But yeah, he's just a big tank. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big tank. It's super flexible in its usability. Like again, I think it's relatively splashable. So yeah, like just always interesting to know the specific reasons for things. But yeah,
Yeah, one other thing is that like, sorry, like versus aggro, you need like, I think you need a certain like amount of just direct damage cards, because once you
mm-hmm.
stabilize for aggro and they're just kind of playing off the top, you want like enough removal to where it's like, okay, within 3 cards I want to find like a Hades that just gets rid of one thing, or like a
Yeah,
cannon or a sword or a Simba that can just get rid of one thing that quests for 2. And like that's just like another option for that is, find it off the top. Well, if they have the one removal, then it's just game. So
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, especially because in Vegas, aggro did a lot better than I think a lot of people were expecting. It was represented in day 2, and I can't remember their name, but there's the fake clip going around of the game where they got the lad flipped the B prep off the top to buy another turn.
Yeah,
it's going to, it's a great clip. It will go down in Lorcana history. But yeah, they did super well with aggro, so no reason to believe that going into Seattle might not be the same case. Also, the grab your swords, I imagine, are super nice in... Like, Steelsong isn't really playing it. Like, most Steelsong lists I look at aren't playing grab swords. Some are. I know DeCandio's on at least 2 most of the time. But a lot have cut it completely. And I think that's part of the reason things like Prince John are getting away with so much. Because obviously there's so few cards that can interact with a card like that. So having a high count of that must be quite nice. If there was anyone looking at this deck that's like, I really want to fit these 2 cards in, what are your cuts here?
That's tough. That's
or say why, or say why you think it's just wrong to cut anything. Like, maybe a fairer question is: are there any other considerations that you've made, or things that you would like to fit in?
Yeah,
maybe that's a fairer
sure.
way of putting it.
I think there's stuff that I definitely want, but not bad enough to cut anything right now. I think a 4th Hades would be nice for red blue. 3rd Cannon sometimes is just nice, just because Cannon going 2nd versus so many matchups is like insane, and it probably just wins you the game. But yeah, if there's stuff to cut, you could cut 1 Vision. At one point I was running with like 3 Vision. Also, I was running 2 Pete. I think Pete would be the card that I would cut down first. If there was like one card that you really wanted to play, I'd say go with 2 Pete. I think that's fine. You can cut a Vision, but it just feels wrong with how reliant you are on Flaversham to not like max out that count. So yeah, I'd go with the Pete first, and if you really had to get something second, yeah, maybe a Simba could be another one too if you're expecting less kind of Steel Song matchups. So maybe one of those 3.
But if they're doing that, it should be for the 4th Hades or the 3rd Cannons. Is there anything else that you can think of that you think could be worth it?
I mean, there's definitely stuff that's tempting also, like 4th Ariel sometimes is tempting against red blue as well. But I think if I were to make a change, it'd be either the 3rd Cannon or 4th Hades.
You'd be raising counts as opposed to any other cards that you consider throwing in here.
As of right now, yeah. No, there's nothing that really
right
kind of I need to fit one of these in or something. I was running 1 Gaston at the start just because I was like, well, it's extra card draw, and I'm also love Gaston. But most of the time, I think it's like I just rather be playing an Ariel and threaten some scary stuff if I have Lucky Dime in hand.
Yeah, I remember I spoke to Moyen about Blue Steel last format, and he was really championing Gaston. I think he said like the way Blue Steel loses is by running out of things to do. So Gaston just helps you keep doing that. But no, super interesting. And again, like I would love to see some Blue Steel come back into meta. Maybe Seattle will be the time. Are you going to be attending Seattle?
I will be, yeah. Thankfully, I got a ticket, so I'll be there.
I know that you're a bit of a Disney fan as well. Obviously, at the beginning, we talked about how that was a component to bring you into Lorcana. How did that all start? And I think Treasure Planet is one I'm going to zone in on that I think you're a bit of a fan of, the same as me, right?
Nope, I've never seen that one.
Have you not?
I love Treasure Planet, so I think everybody knows that for how much I post like John Silver memes, but for Disney, for me, like my family, like that was just our vacation spot. So I think my first trip was when I was 3, and I think we went at least once per year every year since. Nice. So
cool.
Like I was raised on Disney. Yeah, I think I've gone to Disney World much more than Disneyland, but they're both great parks. And then of course, yeah, when you're raised on Disney, you watch the movies too. So Treasure Planet's my favorite Disney movie, but there's plenty of great ones. So,
have you got a favorite inside or outside of Treasure Planet? If you were to pick a favorite character and a favorite song, what would they be? From any Disney, it could be Treasure Planet or something.
There's so many good songs, but for character, I'll go Jim Hawkins, but that's pretty easy.
Jim's great. I'm a big fan. It's in my top 3 Disney films easily. Like super sentimental, so I'm right there with you.
I think song I'd have to go "Going the Distance" from Hercules.
Go the Distance.
That's just such a classic song. Like it has to be an Alan Menken song, right? At the very least, like
of course,
a classic.
I'm super desperate for Hunchback of Notre Dame to make its way into the game. That's up there with some of mine. But
itching to sing Hellfire. Which song are out there?
But all of them. But Hellfire.
Yeah.
Well,
a good song,
Hellfire is obviously the villain song. But I'll be honest. The prologue, the Bells of Notre Dame, is my favourite prologue for. Like, obviously, I studied musicals, so I know a lot of like really famous classical musical prologues that I'm a fan of. But Bells of Notre Dame is just stunning. That whole sequence, huge fan of that. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, great taste. Is there a character or franchise that you're waiting to come to the game?
I think Goofy movie would be pretty cool. I think they could do some fun stuff with that. Meet the Robinsons would be another one for me.
Yeah, nice choice. Yeah, Goofy movie comes up all the time. Like, I think Powerline is probably one of the most requested characters that I see people talking about for the game. I've rewatched it recently. It is a great film. Great taste. Absolutely love it. Sky, if this is people's first time discovering you, where can they find you?
Well, I used to Twitch. My Twitch I used to stream on Twitch. Sky131313. We'll be back eventually. They get a client going, but I guess my Twitter also Sky Lorcana. But yeah, that's it.
You've been playing with V Wonderland with you were doing some IRL playing, right? At some point.
Yep. We I guess I can shout out that. I live in the same town as Wonderland, thankfully. I have a good testing partner to go to who also streams, so
nice.
I'll be on his streams, here and there. So if you want to check him out.
Awesome. Any last thank yous or shout outs or anything you'd like to say to my villainous audience?
I don't know. I guess just shout out to anybody that supported me through my journey. Like you said, there's a very tight knit Blue Steel community, so we've all kind of stayed in touch for the most part since set 2. So shout out to anybody who's helped me, anybody's helped me test. Still believes in Blue Steel, so shout out to you guys.
And there we have it. Super thankful to Sky for taking the time to come onto the channel. Great player, really nice guy, and great to pick his mind about this wheelless version of Blue Steel. What did you think? Have you been tempted now to give this a try? Let me know down in the comments below. But that's going to be it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to the channel, please subscribe for all things Lorcana. Hit that like button to show support, and we'll see you soon.